Eliana was a young graduate living with her parents, and she was jobless. Every day she would go out looking for a job, only to come back disappointed. She would wake up in the morning, pray for just 5 minutes, and then get dressed to go job hunting. Many promises were made to her by a lot of people she knew, only to end up in disappointment. One day, Eliana received a call from an office telling her to come and sign to resume work. Her request for a job had been granted. Eliana was so excited. She ran down to her mother to share the good news, and they both celebrated joyously. So the next day, Eliana woke up very early in the morning, prayed, and dressed herself up. She zoomed off to the office that had called her, only to return home disappointed. When she arrived at the office, they checked for her application file but couldn't find it. It dawned on them that it was a mistake. They apologized to Eliana, explaining how sorry they were for inviting her over, only to realize she wasn't the one they needed. Eliana broke down and cried because she was so disappointed with the whole situation. Eliana now went back home to tell her mother, who was also a bit disappointed, but her mother summoned the courage to encourage her daughter. Her mother told her that God is still alive, and that there is nothing He cannot do. Her mother encouraged her to trust more in God. Later that day, Eliana went out to the garden at the center of the city. She was so sad she sat alone at the city garden, gazing at the trees and the flowers around her. Suddenly, an elderly woman came from nowhere and sat close to her. The woman was acting so familiar. Eliana was wondering who she could be, as she had never set her eyes on such a woman before. The elderly woman greeted Eliana first, and Eliana greeted her in return. They started talking. The elderly woman asked for Eliana's name, and Eliana told her. She asked why Eliana was so sad and sitting alone. Eliana told her all she had been through. The woman promised Eliana that all her troubles would soon be over. She told Eliana that what she was experiencing was called disappointment, and that there must be a spirit behind it. She told Eliana that things do not just happen to people unless they are programmed in the realm of spirits. The elderly woman brought out her Bible, and she and Eliana both read the book of Matthew chapter 17 verse 21, which says, "This kind goeth not out except by prayer and fasting." The elderly woman asked Eliana to go back home and engage herself in fasting and prayer. The elderly woman told Eliana her own story and how God had been so faithful to her. They ended the conversation, and the elderly woman held Eliana's hands and prayed for her. They both went their separate ways. Eliana went back home and started fasting the next day. She embarked on a 7-day fast. Eliana would start praying by 12 at midnight and stop by 1 a.m. She would start praying again at 3 a.m. and stop by 4 a.m. She continued praying at every 3-hour interval. She would pray for an hour long, and she would break her fast by 6 p.m. each day. She fasted and prayed earnestly for 7 consecutive days. When her days of fasting and prayers were over, she waited for another 3 days before she went out to look for a job. She went to 3 places to look for a job. When she got back home, she slept at night and had a dream. In her dream, she saw herself walking on a street, and she saw dark fingers from a dark cloud touching her forehead. In the dream, she was able to shout out, "Jesus!" and a fire came down from heaven above and consumed the dark fingers and the dark cloud. Then, she suddenly woke up that night, and she prayed again and again until she fell asleep again. The next morning, she did not wake up early. It was a phone call that woke her up, and it was a call of joy. The company where Eliana had last submitted her job application was the one that called her to come and resume the job immediately. It was the best and highest paying job that she never expected. Eliana told her mother, and they both gave glory to God in heaven.
If you are experiencing disappointments in your life, here are some powerful and effective prayers for you to pray and be delivered.